really in the country, because so far as weather forces go, we really have all three aspects of the military weather support. So the three missions, there's really three distinct missions that weather guys and gals in the Air Force support. There's an aviation mission to support the flying jets. And there is also a special operations mission, which you met some of them over here, to support some of the more unique mission sets that the Special Forces operations require. And so we have a 123rd Special Tactics Squadron here, and they have a Special Operations Weather Team, or SOWT. I'm too tall here. I wonder if I can go mobile. Probably not.
Go mobile.
Yeah, so that's as far as it goes. I'll do the leaning action here. We've got the Special Operations Weather Team, and then we have my unit, the 123rd Weather Flight, and we do the Army support mission. And what's unique about our mission is that while we are Air Force, we go out into the field and we are actually working side by side with the United States Army, as does often the SOWT Special Operations STS team. So all three of those mission sets are represented right here on this base, and that puts us in a unique place in the country so far as weather support goes. So you get a chance to see and hear from each of us this morning. So what I'd like to do now, a little bit about the organization of Air Force Weather. Not unlike the National Weather Service, they have gone to a kind of a center-centric organization. So across the, of course, with the exception, the National Weather Service has a national focus. The Air Force Weather has a global focus. So what they've done is divided the globe into 8 distinct regions, and at each region they've assigned to what we call a hub, or an operational weather squadron, and those hubs have the forecasting responsibility for that region. So you can imagine the folks at Hickam Air Force Base in Honolulu, who covers the 17th OWS, covers the Pacific Theater. They have an immense area of forecasting responsibility covering from basically pole to pole in that area of the world. And of course, and their focus is specifically for military forces and bases and things of that nature. But you can imagine trying to cover the globe and forecasting anything from sea states, hurricanes, typhoons, to ice and snow up in the northern tier. So an immense responsibility. Our region, the 25th Operational Weather Squadron in the western U.S. is covered by Air Force weathermen down at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base down in Arizona. There is an Operational Weather Squadron there of 150 active duty weather people who have the forecast responsibility for all military bases, I should say Air Force bases, and some Army posts in the western United States. And so our group, because we are Air National Guard, we're not assigned to these regions, but we use the resources that they provide, because we're not full-time forecasters, we're actual traditional guardsmen. So we come in a weekend a month, 2 weekends in the summer, and we do our training, and the weather squadrons handle the full-time operations. So that's just a little taste. It's much more complex, but just to give you a sense for how that's organized. But what I really wanted to do this morning was to kind of talk about where we come from. A little look at Air Force weather history. It's always kind of interesting. In fact, just last summer, they had a celebration back at our parent headquarter location, Air Force Weather Agency, which is headquartered in Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. They had a celebration of 75 years of Air Force weather service. And so they put out a historical document that talks about some of the background of our agency. So it's interesting to look at some of the history, because you'll find that Much of some of the folks out here who have a background in the National Weather Service, maybe some of you have military service yourself, but much of what you see today in the civilian weather services side has benefited greatly from the impact of the Air Force, or the early Air Force meteorological service. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a time warp here and talk about some of that. So the first early known records of weather observations taken in the North American continent go all the way back into the 1600s, when a man of the cloth, Reverend John Campanais, at Swedes Fort near Wilmington, a closet weather geek, would take weather observations. And in the 1700s, we have records of a Paul Dudley. He was a Chief Justice of Massachusetts, and collected regular weather records for Boston. And of course, everyone is familiar with Benjamin Franklin, the consummate scientist that he was. Took numerous weather observations, and in fact, he used reports from his postmasters general that gathered weather observations to help deduce the track of a hurricane moving up from the West Indies. In fact, in October 1743, there's this a popular myth: a storm moving from the southwest denied Franklin the ability to witness a lunar eclipse. So he was much amiss about that, I guess, and he was said to have noted the prevailing winds were actually from the northeast, contrary to what he expected. So maybe he had a nor'easter roll through and he couldn't see the sky. And in correspondence with his brother, Franklin learned that this same storm had not reached Boston until after the eclipse, despite the fact that Boston is to the northeast of Philadelphia. And his conclusion was that these storm tracks, in fact, moved not necessarily with the prevailing winds. So if you have a northeast wind and yet the storm is moving towards the northeast. And so his observation of the weather helped to greatly expand some of the understanding of meteorology. And of course, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, they also gathered weather data at their respective locations. And so, but early on, it was largely a matter of individual effort. There was no real collective attempt to observe or forecast for the weather. So, in 1804, though, the military guy, I think, got probably his first marching orders, and this coming from Thomas Jefferson to then Captain Clark, or excuse me, Captain Meriwether Lewis, into taking weather observations during their trek across the newly purchased Louisiana Purchase in 1804 to 1806. And so they gathered weather information along the way as military members. And if you were here in October, you probably heard them make the observation that could they possibly have experienced a Columbus Day-like windstorm, and through some of their diary entries, and I think it was tree rings or things that they looked at. So the military got its first taste in the foray of gathering weather observations at that time. Then in 1814, the Medical Corps got involved in that the U.S. Army Surgeon General, he directed hospital surgeons to record the weather. And his recommendation concerning the Weather Observation Network led to an Army regulation, with the first recorded observations being made in January of 1819. And by 1825, surgeons at 18 forts were taking regular weather observations, and these would eventually be reported or published in an official record book, but they would only really come out about annually or so. So it was not something that was frequently done, and its main purpose was for medical science and not anything really operationally. Initially, it was just a thermometer and a wind vane were the only instruments. By 1836, a rain gauge was added, and by 1840, additional funds allowed the purchase of barometers and hygrometers. So then fast forward till about 1870, the U.S. Army Signal Corps gets the call. And here now we get Congress involved. And By 1870, Congress charged the War Department, and this is a quote in the records, for taking meteorological observations at the military stations in the interior of the continent and at other points in the states and territories of the U.S. and for